It's finally time. I have been waiting so long to do this video and I am so excited. So I have been hoarding all of these blind date with the books. I wanted to get one from different bookstores and I finally went to 3 bookstores that had blind date with books. I think the first 2 I've had for over a year now, and then this last one I recently got. You will see that in my birthday book haul. I did get this one for my birthday, which was super exciting, and now I finally get to film this video. So I have 3 blind date with the books, obviously. This first one is from Steamy Lit Bookstore in Tampa, Florida. This other one is just from Barnes & Nobles, like my local Barnes & Nobles had a stand-up blind date with the books. And then this one is from Femfire Books, which is in Jacksonville. So I am so excited to get into these. All of them are like very different. I believe they're all different genres. For these 2, I do have a prediction. For this one, I have absolutely no idea, but let's just like get into them, talk about them, open them up, and we're going to be seeing what I will be reading for this little experiment, this little vlog. So we're going to start off with this one because I got it most recently. So this one is a workplace romance, opposite attract, queer rep, and the main characters host a seminar on modern sex life. And I do have a prediction of what this one is. I just can't think of the title of it, but I will put the cover on the screen. I want to say it's the one where it's like the girl and the guy, they're like on some sort of stage, like one of them's at like a podium or something. I can't think of the name. Oh gosh. I know what I'm picturing. I described the cover to you. I think the cover's blue. I honestly don't remember. Is she like in a pink or a red dress? Like I have an idea. I can't think of the title, but you see the cover. That's my prediction for what this one is. So let's see. I absolutely think this wrapping is so gorgeous. Also, I love when bookstores do this. I just find it so fun. Let's go ahead and open it up. I'm so scared. I've had these for so long, and I feel scared opening them. But you know, it's finally time. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was correct about my prediction for what this book was. That's honestly so exciting because it was my prediction when I had gone there to get it, because it's one that I have been wanting to read for a while now. So this is so exciting. Very excited to get into this one. It also came with this bookmark and these 2 stickers. So we have the Steamy Lit Collective, and then I want to say this is like a little pickle. I'm not too sure, but I think their like whole thing is like pickles. I think. I only been there once. But yes. Oh, love getting stickers and bookmarks. Definitely such a cool little addition. Oh my gosh. This makes me so happy that I got this one right. So yeah. Really excited to jump into this one. But let me actually say the title. It's The Intimacy Experiment. That was the title that I could not think of for the life of me. Okay, so this one is following Naomi, and she is a sex ed teacher, and his name Ethan. He is the rabbi of a synagogue, and he's trying to sort of turn it around before the doors have to close for good. And they end up like partnering, and she like does like a whole seminar at his synagogue, and I just feel like this is going to be just such a fun, cute read. But yes, I'm very excited. So my guess, I'm 1 for 3 so far, and I am just so excited. Okay, I'm gonna go and open this one next. This is the one that I have absolutely zero idea what it could be. But this one, it's really cool. It says, read this if you like short stories that make you ask big questions about the world. And that is why I ended up picking this one up, just because I love a good introspective story. It tells you the genre, so it's fiction short stories. The setting, various, because, you know, short story collection. Pages 272, and then it gives you the first line, which says, "The morning before the school shooting passed like any other, all my neighbors out at dawn performing oblations to the angels on our roofs." So, I have absolutely no idea what this one could be, and I feel like that's really good to have like a wild card pick in this one. So let's go ahead and open this one up and see what it is. Yeah, I have absolutely no guess. I don't stay up to date with like short stories collections or anything, so absolutely no guess. This cover is so pretty. I was not expecting such a vibrant cover, but this is the Rock Eaters, and it says right here, "What does it mean to be other? What does it mean to love in a world determined to keep us apart?" So it is just, oh. And it also came with this Finfire Books bookmark, and yes, so cute. So it looks like there are 16 short stories in this collection. And yeah, it looks like they're more like sci-fi, fantastical type of like magical realism type stories. It is blurbed on the back by Jeff Vandermeer, so I'm feeling like it might have some weirder vibes just because that's the kind of vibes that I get from his kind of books. So I am really interested to see what I think about this one, but this cover is so pretty. I love the orange and the pink together. This is definitely not something I would see in a bookstore and pick up. Like, I would definitely comment on the cover, but I just feel like I don't tend to gravitate necessarily to short story collections, so I'm excited to see how I feel about this one. All right, and we are down to the last one to open. I always get nervous opening these, but this one, I do have a guess of what this one is, but it says, "Three Lives Converge, R.F. Kuang approved, celestial prophecies, forbidden magic, and epic debut fantasy." Also, with this whole experiment, I think it will also be interesting to see if I like the picks from like a big store like Barnes & Noble's, or the ones that are from like independent bookstores. I definitely think that will be like cool to see. But my guess for this one is going to be Black Sun. Hopefully I'm getting that title right. Obviously I'm really bad with titles, but I believe that is the title of it, and I believe it's like written by an Indigenous author, and I've heard so many good things about it. I know like it's the first in a series, but that is my guess for this book. Although I feel like that book was a lot thicker than like this one is. Like, this one doesn't feel that thick to me. Definitely, you know, thicker than the other ones, but yeah. Obviously it's going to be a fantasy book, which is different from a romance or like a short story collection. But that is my guess. But the main thing that drew me to this was that it's R.F. Kuang approved. I love R.F. Kuang. I love all of her books. So if she approves something, hopefully I end up loving it as well. But let's just go ahead and get into this one. Was I right? I was right. All right. 2 out of 3 guesses correct. Amazing. This is definitely one I have been wanting to read. And it's like such a floppy paperback. Okay, I love that. Oh, all right. I am super excited to get into this one. Oh, so excited. But yes, oh, I love when I guess correctly. I don't want to read too much onto the back of it just because I feel like I got enough from like the little blurb on the paper, but this is so exciting. So these are my 3 books. How exciting. I will say, as far as packaging goes, the indie bookstores are definitely getting that point. They also come with like bookmarks or stickers, like something a little extra, which I like. So like better packaging, little like stickers and bookmarks, like it's just a whole lot more. And then like this one from Barnes & Noble's It's just the book. It was also the most expensive. However, I won't factor that in just because this is the biggest book there. So like, it's fine. But yeah, for packaging points, definitely I love the flowers, the greenery on the other ones versus like the boring like brown paper. Personal preference, but I like the prettier packaging. And again, the little bookmarks and stuff, I like that inclusion in them. So indie bookstores are winning that point for sure. But these are the 3 books that I got. Also, me guessing 2 of them correctly makes me really happy. I also just really appreciate the diversity of these books. That does make me really happy. So Black Sun, I believe the author is Indigenous. The Intimacy Experiment has Jewish representation. And then The Rock Eaters, I believe the author is Dominican American. So I just love this representation. I'm really excited to get into all of these, but yes, this was so exciting. I'm so happy to finally be starting this little reading experiment. I have been waiting so long to do this. I will probably read the first chapter, or in this case, the first story, and give my initial opinions on all of them. But I am so excited, and I will see you once I finish all of these first chapters. I read the first little short story in The Rock Eaters. The title of that story was called Thoughts and Prayers, and it surrounds a school shooting and sort of the politics, I guess, of one specific neighborhood that is sort of divided on different gun control policies. And this story was really good. That individual story, I'm going to give 5 stars. It was really well done, very sad and traumatic, and also very interesting. That one had a bit of magical realism in that each of these houses in this little community all have an angel that sits atop of them, and it sort of explores whether your house and your angel are lucky. And if you have a sort of bad angel, then you have bad luck. And our main character is one of the lives in one of the luckiest houses, and her best friend lives in one of the unluckiest houses, and her best friend's sister ends up being one who passes away in this school shooting. And it follows all of that, and I really like the things that it brings up and how different people react to tragedies, and it was just really well done. So this was a great one to start off with, and I'm very excited to see what the rest of this collection has to offer, because that was a very strong story to start off with. Now I'm going to go read the first chapter of The Intimacy Experiment, and I will be back to share my thoughts on this one. I have read the first chapter of The Intimacy Experiment, and this first chapter was pretty short, but the 2 main characters have already met at an educational conference, and so far I'm really enjoying it. I don't have too many opinions, obviously, just because of how short the first chapter was, but I'm definitely still interested to continue this one. I would say the short story collection is one that I really want to read, and this one would be right after it if I'm just ranking it based on the first chapter, or in the short story case, the first short story. But yeah, I am definitely really interested in this one, and I do really want to continue. And I will go and read Black Sun now and talk about that first chapter. I am back after reading the first chapter of each of these books, and I'm kind of surprised with how it went. So the first chapter of The Intimacy Experiment sort of introduces us to Naomi and sort of her character, who she is. She used to be an adult entertainer, and now she runs this company where she teaches about sex education, and she is at a educational conference, and that is where she meets Ethan. And I really enjoyed this first chapter. I think it was a strong first chapter to get me interested into this book. So I am continuing with this one, obviously. But I also read the first chapter of Black Sun, And this one really surprised me with how it started out, because I feel like most fantasy books sort of start out with like a lot of world building and just there's not like a lot of action that happens in the first chapter. And this first chapter follows our main character who is undergoing this ritual to become a god, and I believe he was 12, and so it's his mom who's secretly like preparing him for this ritual. And just like, it was very interesting. This first chapter really shocked me, and I think this is the one that I want to continue on with the most at the moment from the first chapter. So after the first chapter, I would say Black Sun is the one that I want to read the most, then The Rock Eater, and then The Intimacy Experiment. I think all of these are like really great, really strong books so far, but I do have to say that this first chapter definitely shocked me and makes me want to read it the most. The Rock Eater, that first short story was a 5-star read and it was really good. But since it is a short story collection, I'm sort of nervous about how the other stories are going to go and if they will be as strong. And then The Intimacy Experiment obviously is one that I still want to read. It didn't give me like the same drive to continue reading it just because I don't really know where it's going so far. Obviously it's a romance, so I can kind of guess where it's going. But yeah, this is the order that I'm giving it after the very first chapter. I have made it halfway through The Intimacy Experiment and we're going to talk about it. Also, I just realized that this author wrote The Roommate, so this is technically like book 2 in the series. And as I was reading it, the like side characters in this seemed very familiar, and I couldn't place it until I realized that it said right here on the cover that this author wrote The Roommate. And I feel like it's so interesting because this book I am absolutely loving, but The Roommate is actually a book I think I gave like 2 stars. I really just was not a fan of it. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. It definitely has a different vibe, in my opinion, than The Roommate. But yeah, maybe it's just because these characters are a little older, a little more established in their life. But I do really want to continue on with this book. Right now, I would say it's like a 4.5 stars. It's not like totally a 5-star just yet, but I'm really excited to see where this book goes. It's a lot of pining for each other so far, and that whole like I'm not sure if they like me back type of vibe, and it's just so fun, so cute, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how I end up loving this book. So I have read the next short story in this collection, The Stones of Sorrow Lake, and that was a very like sad story. It was very short. I want to say it was only like 16 pages. So it takes place in this small town where anytime someone has like a really big sorrow in their life, their skin basically grows a stone, and the stone has to be taken to this lake. And so the short story is basically talking about like a lot of different people in this town and their different sorrows, but it's also focusing on this one specific couple. And yeah, it was definitely very sad. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. It wasn't something super mind-blowing or like shocking or anything that I think's definitely going to stick with me forever, but it was a very interesting concept, and it was like really well written and executed and everything, so I'm not mad about it at all. Definitely a really good short story. But yeah, I will update you the next time I finish one of these short stories. But the first 2 have both been really sad, so I feel like this is a collection that's going to take me quite a bit of time to get through. I finished The Intimacy Experiment last night, and I have some thoughts and feelings, so let's talk about it. I think this book was so cute. I did decide on giving it 4 stars, and I'll talk about why it never ended up being a 5-star, but I really enjoyed this book. It was so cute. I really enjoyed their relationship and both of these characters sort of going through some of their like past trauma and trying to work through things to better themselves and become a better person. I just really enjoyed that, and also seeing them both like go after what they want to do and like their whole career path and everything. I just really enjoyed all of it. The reason this didn't end up being a 5-star read is just because of the third act breakup. I just wish these characters had communicated a little more, especially since they are, well, because our main character Naomi, she is teaching this sex ed class or this modern intimacy class at Ethan Synagogue, and she specifically like is going through different things about dating and everything, and I feel like in this course communication is very much an important thing, and since when these two characters end up getting together they decide to follow this course, I just wish that they had actually followed it and communicated and stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed how it ended and everything ended up playing out, and I really like that there wasn't this whole like jealousy aspect, because I feel like that definitely was something that could have happened and I was scared of happening in this story, just because Naomi is famous. But I really liked everything about this book. Just that third act breakup really brought it down for me, but this was so cute, and it makes me even more sad because, you know, the roommate was one that I didn't enjoy and I really wish I had, because this would have been such a fun series. I do like the characters from the roommate in this book though, so I don't know what it was about the roommate. I honestly don't remember too much about it, like I just put it out of my head. But either way, this one was a really good book, and we shall see how it stacks up against the other two. I read the next short story in this collection, and this story was titled The Whitest Girl, and this was a very interesting story. I'm really unsure how to feel about it. I think I'm going to just give it a 3-star, just like a middle of the road rating. Not because the story itself was bad, but just because I was kind of confused on what the takeaway of the story was. So this story is following the Whitest Girl as she is attending this all-girls Catholic school. The school is mainly made up of Latina girls, and all of these girls are sort of very intrigued by this new girl. They're constantly talking about her looks, how she is brought up, because all of these girls at this school, it's a private school, and they are all pretty well off, while this new girl is very poor, lives in a trailer, and she ends up getting into a relationship with a janitor at this all-girls school, and so all of the other girls are all kind of jealous that she's getting with this older guy, and some secrets about this guy are revealed. They invite her to a party. Some of them want to befriend her, some of them don't, and the story itself was good. I just don't really know what to get out of it, because there's not like a good ending to this book. I wouldn't say that The Whitest Girl, she does not have a happy ending. It's not like a bad ending, it's just not a happy ending. As well as the older guy she was with, he also doesn't seem to have that bad of an ending. It's not really a story about friendship, because none of these girls seem to really get along. Especially at the end, I feel like they threw one of them like under the bus, but like the story wasn't bad. I'm just very confused about it. So I just finished the short story Yiza, and I'm going to give this one 4 stars. This one is following these 11-year-old girls who are playing tennis, and they come from like different class backgrounds, and I really enjoyed it. It's not necessarily a story about friendship, but I guess just kindness in general, and I really enjoyed it. So yes, the next story is called The Drownings, and I'm gonna read that now. Alright, so I have finished The Drownings, and I think I'm going to give it just like a solid 3 stars. It was very like lyrically and beautifully written. However, I just didn't necessarily get anything out of it. The story is following this group of, I want to say like middle school kids. They're like 11, 12 years old, and they are all fascinated with the water, and it talks a lot about kids drowning. However, since it is written more from like the kids' perspective, they don't really see the drownings as something traumatic, but as an experience that they're all striving to experience. That's like the joy of life, is knowing that there's something to lose sort of vibe that this story gives off. We're specifically following this one new girl at the school who doesn't know how to swim and is sort of trying to get in with all of these kids who are obsessed with swimming. And this is another one where like I understand kind of where the story was going, but then the ending is just really sad. There's definitely not like a happy ending to this, and I just kind of wanted a little more from it in that aspect. But yes, I am now on page 97 of this book, so I am slowly making my way through it. I am still really enjoying this collection. I think it's a very solid collection so far, and I'm very excited to see what the other stories in this collection offer. It has been quite a while since I've updated this vlog. I had a lot of personal things going on in my life, and they are ongoing, but I just haven't felt like filming. But I have been reading a bit, definitely not a lot. We are halfway through August already, or almost halfway through August, and I have not finished anything yet, but I have made progress on the books I was reading for this vlog specifically. So let's talk about them. It's not going to be in the moment like I had originally planned, but let's talk about them. So I only have a couple of stories left in The Rock Eater. I have read quite a few of them since I last updated, and I did take notes after I finished each story. So I'm just going to talk about each of these stories that I have already read. But I will say I wanted to come on when I was like halfway through this to give my thoughts on it, and obviously I'm more than halfway, so my thoughts for like the halfway mark is that this is a very strong collection and I'm really enjoying the majority of these stories. However, some of the stories that I've more recently read towards the closer to the ending of this collection have not been as strong. I've definitely had more 2 and 3 star stories, which obviously we will get to those, but they weren't as strong as in the beginning, which is kind of a letdown, especially when I got to the title story, which again I'll get to, but that one I really just didn't understand why it was the title of the story. But yes, I do have some more time today, so after I finish updating you guys, I am hoping to finish this collection off. But yeah. At about the halfway mark, I probably would have said this collection would be like a 4-star collection, but now I'm leaning to like a 3.5 star rating, which is sad, but you know, collections, it's always going to be a hit or miss with different stories and which ones you connect with. So I'm not too shocked, but it did just have such a strong beginning that I was kind of just hoping that this would be one of those short story collections that end up becoming like my all-time favorites. So the first story I read and didn't update you guys on is The Great Escape, and this story I ended up giving 4 stars, and it follows this girl who is growing up throughout the story, and she is watching her Tia go through Alzheimer's, and it is a very sad story all about grief from both sides, this girl and her Tia, but when all of this stuff sort of happened and like in my own personal life, you know, I was grieving a lot, and this story has a lot to do with grief, and this was the very first thing that I picked up when I finally felt like reading. And so it's definitely a story that has really sat with me, but it also was very cathartic. So this girl is watching, you know, her family sort of come and go, you know, whenever there is someone in your family who's going through something like dementia or Alzheimer's, you know, there's a lot of tough feelings that go into that. And so our main character, she is pretty much the only one who has stuck around through the entire time. And, you know, she's getting stories about her Tia's life. And you see that, you know, from all these stories that she's telling, that she's just really scared of losing herself, but she's also never been as alone. So she's also thinking about who she is as she's alone and how everyone around her is just waiting for her to pass away so they can have her things. She doesn't necessarily want people to have her things or to see her as only her material possessions. And this just was a very strong story and I really enjoyed it. The ending and the whole like sort of mystery around the story is the only reason I didn't necessarily give this 5 stars. I would have rather the story just been something more rooted in grief and these tougher feelings and conversations, but it was a really good one. Next we have The Kite Maker, and this is a more sci-fi kind of story in which a group of aliens ends up landing on Earth, and obviously humans don't take very kindly to that. But we are specifically following a woman who runs a kite shop, and these aliens are very intrigued by human things such as kites. So her main clients are these aliens, but also like humans, again, they don't take very kindly to aliens. And these humans are just very intrigued by alien culture, and they're sort of taking a lot of their technology while at the same time demonizing them in a sense. And I think this was just a really good story about sort of illegal aliens and how in our own culture we use the word alien for someone who is illegal or immigrating to another country or so and so. And that's a lot about what this story is about. And our main character ends up not necessarily forming a friendship with a very specific alien who comes into her shop, but she does have sort of tougher feelings that she's grappling with, and that when the aliens did arrive in her town, she was right there along with all the other humans, sort of, you know, kicking them, you know, trying to, you know, get rid of them. And so she's sort of struggling with that her feelings have sort of changed and she's regretting her past decisions. But yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. I kind of just wanted a lot out of it. I feel like a lot of different characters and certain things were like posed in the story but not necessarily explored, and I just kind of wanted a little bit more out of it. The next story is What We Lost, and this was an interesting one. It again has sort of this post-apocalyptic dystopian kind of vibe to it, but it is following these, I think they're teenagers if I'm remembering correctly, but they are sort of grappling with climate change and political leaders who aren't doing anything about it. So in their world, obviously there's been a whole lot of natural disasters and things, and now people are losing parts of their body, and it's sort of just become normalized for people to be losing parts of their body, for you to just go outside and just see body parts like laying all over the floor. And yeah, it's a very short story. I think it might be the shortest one in this collection, or at least as far as I've read so far, but it does have quite an impact of these very young people sort of grappling with wanting change, wanting to make a difference, and yet losing parts of their body and not necessarily sure how they all fit together to sort of make this change. And it was just a really good story. I do wish it was a bit longer just to explore a bit more, but I did really enjoy the impact of it, and it is one that I gave 4 stars to. On to Rock Eaters, that is the title of this collection, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm not necessarily sure why it was chosen to be the title story. I was really looking forward to this one just because I'm always very intrigued at sort of what makes someone choose which story title to use as the title for the collection. And it is a story that I gave 3 stars to. I definitely was not necessarily into it as much. It was an interesting one. I'm not necessarily sure what the themes of this story were. Like, I have some guesses, but I feel like none of them really fit with like other pieces of the story. But this is a more fantastical story about this family who ends up going to another country, I believe to America, and while they're there, they end up learning how to fly. And since they know how to fly, they decide to take sort of a family trip back to their home country. And while there, everyone in their home country is sort of wary of them because obviously they are floating, flying, and obviously the people in their home country cannot do such things. And yeah, during the course of this trip that they have there of visiting all their family and stuff, all of the people from America, all of their kids who were super excited to learn how to fly, end up deciding that they don't actually want to fly, and so they end up eating rocks to make themselves heavier so that they cannot fly. And it's just a very weird premise or weird story. In some ways, I feel like this is about how parents cannot like pressure their kids to follow in their footsteps, but also just going back to your roots and being true to your own culture and who you really are. But at the same time, there's certain commentary that makes me feel like that's not necessarily what the book is about. But yeah, this one was a weird one, specifically the ending to the story, in which all of the parents kind of just leave and just let their kids be eating rocks. I don't know, it was a very weird story. Yeah, I really didn't understand it, but like at the same time, it was very intriguing. I really enjoyed the writing style of it, which is why I ended up giving it a 3-star. Which leads me to my least favorite story so far in this collection, and that is The True Love Game. And this one follows a group of ghosts who are watching these 2 girls sort of grow up, have crushes. They sort of have this game where they write on a piece of paper all of the people they have crushes on or that they love versus who they'll end up marrying. And it's very weird. The ghosts have this weird influence that I didn't really understand. Even though these girls cannot necessarily see the ghosts, they can sort of feel their impact. We sort of have a lot of other characters like family dynamics, friendships, all of that going on, but none of these characters were really explored, so I didn't really understand their point. And also these 2 girls have a friendship, but yet they're not really friends. And again, the ending of this one made no sense to me. Really, this entire story made no sense to me. I really did not understand anything that was happening, and it honestly made me feel kind of dumb just because I did not understand it in any sense. But yeah, definitely a disappointing one. I really didn't understand it, but it is what it is. Next, we have The Touches, and this is another sort of post-apocalyptic story where we are again sort of talking about climate change and also AI or like VR sort of stuff. So our main character, who we are following, lives in the dirty, which is the real world. She has an AI robot who tends to her every needs, and anytime she isn't taking care of like her basic functions, she lives in VR. She is married, she is having a kid in this virtual reality world, and this world is what they deem the clean. So it is where they cannot get sick and anything. They are all isolated in the dirty because if they come in contact with anyone else in the actual real world, they will get sick and, you know, not be alive anymore. Just it was just a very interesting book. Our main character is also a researcher, and overall this whole story is sort of talking about human connection. She is recounting all of the times she's actually physically been touched by someone who wasn't a robot, or in like this whole VR world where they can't really stimulate the actual feeling of being touched. It was a very interesting story. It is one that I gave 4 stars to, and that is just because I, again, was sort of caught off guard by the ending. I sort of, not gonna lie, I had hopes that it was going to turn into sort of a sapphic sort of romance, and it didn't. The ending was a bit off to how it was leading up to, but it was still a very good one. And then the last one is The Man I Could Be, and this was one I also gave 4 stars to. And it kind of shocked me because it had a much different tone to it, a different sort of writing style that I honestly didn't really like, which is why I didn't give it 5 stars. But we are following this teenage boy as he is in high school, going through all of, you know, the normal teenage stuff. And his dad, who he really looks up to, ends up giving him his prized jacket. But this jacket ends up being this sort of idealized version of himself. So the whole like theme to that story is sort of being true to you and not sort of comparing yourself to others, not changing yourself to please other people. And I really enjoyed it. It was a shorter one, so I don't really know how much really I can say about this one besides that like you're really just going through this guy's life as he grows up and has to really grapple with who he truly is. And I thought it was a really, like, not necessarily a sweet story. It was kind of heartbreaking to watch him grow up in the way that he did, but it was still like the overall message of it was very heartwarming. So I did enjoy that one. But that catches you guys up on all of the short stories in this collection I have so far read. I will hopefully be doing my actual like normal updates from here on out. I think I only have like 3 or 4 stories left in here to read. So again, hopefully I do get to finish this one today, if not tomorrow. I am off from work tomorrow, so it will definitely be done tomorrow. Now let's talk about Black Sun. I am again over halfway through, and I think my feelings on it at the current moment is the same as when I was at the halfway point, but I am loving this book. This book is one that I don't want to put down. It's so easy to like read and just like get sucked into it. And I definitely see this as being a 5-star read. It has been quite a while since I have read a fantasy, let alone a chunkier fantasy. I have definitely been much more of a romance reader as of late, and this just feels so comforting to go back to like how I started reading, which I was mainly reading like sci-fi fantasy books. And so this just feels so nice to get back into reading fantasy, and this book is just so great. I love like all of the characters. I do have a favorite, but I will probably talk about that more when I finish the book. And I definitely want to continue on in the series, but it is just so good. I'm not really sure when I updated you guys about this or if I really talked about what it's about. I honestly don't know how to explain what it's about. We're following a whole bunch of different characters, and they all are sort of on their own different paths. I'm assuming by the end of this book they all end up meeting up, but it definitely has a very interesting magic system and sort of like all these different gods that sort of make up different parts of the world, and it's just very fascinating. It's very political, and I'm really intrigued by this whole book. I'm just gonna read you the synopsis on the back of the book because I feel like that will just be easier. But it says, in the holy city of Toba, 3 lives are converging during a solar eclipse, prescribed by the sun priest as an unbalancing of the world. Meanwhile, a ship launches from a distant city bound for Toba and set to arrive on the solstice. The captain of the ship, Zyla, is a disgraced teak whose songs can calm the waters around her as easily as it can warp a man's mind. Her ship carries one passenger. Described as harmless, the passenger, Serapio, is a young man, blind, scarred, and cloaked in destiny. As Zyla well knows, when a man is described as harmless, he usually ends up being the villain. And I can definitely see why this book has won so many awards. I can definitely see why Ara Kwong would blurb this book, and I think that is like the best comparison for this book is the Poppy War trilogy, which is one of my all-time fantasy series, and this definitely gives me the same vibes. Obviously, they're very different settings, and the Poppy War is definitely a lot darker in my opinion, but I feel like the easiness of reading the sort of very specific kind of magic system that they both have is they're just very similar vibe wise, and yes, I am just so obsessed with this book at the moment and I really want to finish it. I cannot wait to finish it. And I definitely need to get the next book from my library ASAP because I just want to carry on this momentum and keep reading. And I feel like this book is gonna make me enter my fantasy era again, because this is just so good. This is so good. I definitely wasn't expecting to enjoy this book as much as I am, but it is so good. I am absolutely loving it. But I will update you guys again when I finish one of these books or make progress in these. Updates will happen again. I have finished the next story in this collection. It is called Katerina, and this one I'm giving 2 stars to. I really did not care about anything going on in this story. I was kind of bored through it, which is kind of sad to say. I guess you could say the theme of this one is like comparing yourself to others, not being jealous of people, but honestly I don't know. So we're following our main character who gets into a relationship with this guy, but this guy was previously in a relationship with Katerina, so it's sort of a love triangle type deal. Our main character does not like Katerina, but she ends up getting into a relationship with this guy because Katerina ends up getting into an accident and falling into a coma. She has some experimental things performed on her that ends up not working, and so she is sort of like a zombie in the fact that she is not alive, but she is like still able to eat, walk around, all this stuff, but she's like not actually conscious. And so all 3 of them are living in the same house, and our main character is pretty much just talking about how she does not like Katerina. She wants her gone, and the guy she is with is sort of debating on whether or not to pretty much pull the plug on Katerina and, you know, get rid of her. I believe it's been like 11 years that she has been in this coma, so it has been quite a long time, but I wouldn't really say I got anything out of the story, and it was definitely a very big disappointment. It has been a bit of time. I did schedule my book haul to go up, and I have since finished The Dreamers. I'm gonna give it 2 stars. This was kind of a very disappointing story to me, specifically because it is so far the most overtly queer story. It definitely has a sapphic relationship at the forefront, possibly a more polyamorous relationship. But I feel like this book was supposed to deal more with grief and like these heavy emotional topics, and I definitely didn't get any sort of feelings out of the story. We are in this world where nobody goes to sleep. If you fall asleep, then you're basically sleeping away many years of your life. And when you wake up, you will only have a short amount of time to live. And so the story is following our main character. It starts out, I believe she's in 4th grade or she's like very young. And her best friend ends up purposefully falling asleep. And so she is sort of dealing with what happens when her friend wakes up again. And they sort of have this very rocky, tumultuous relationship with each other. It is a sexual relationship. I don't want to say it's a necessarily queer like relationship, because they are sort of like have a very rocky friendship, but it is definitely a sexual relationship. And there is also a third person in this relationship, and the story kind of follows the third party who ends up possibly also falling asleep on purpose. And that sort of is where we get this whole, I guess, catalyst event of these two characters grappling with their relationship with each other. And yeah, obviously I can't say too much more than that. If that explanation even made much sense, it's a very weird dynamic for the story. But again, since this one is the most overtly queer story in this collection, I was sort of hoping for a little more, since it deals so much with grief, since everyone in this world knows that everyone who falls asleep is not really going to have too much time left. Nobody knows how long people are going to sleep for, all of that stuff. So it's a very interesting way to write a story that deals with these heavier topics and just not necessarily get that emotion across. So yeah, that was kind of disappointing. There are only 2 stories left in this collection, but I am going to take a bit of a break, and I will update you later when I finish the next one. It's the next day and I have finished both of these books, so let's talk about them. So I didn't actually update you guys when I finished the last 2 stories in this collection, and honestly, they were definitely not my favorites, and I was very disappointed in them. So the first one that we have is We Work in Miraculous Cages, and this one is the first 1-star story that I gave out in this collection. This one just really did not work for me. So this story is following a recent college graduate, and she's basically just not having a good time in her life. She's working 2 dead-end jobs, and she has some relationship problems. One of those jobs is her working at an emergency vet clinic, I believe as like the receptionist person there. And so that also made the story quite a downer, because she's just describing all of these very sick animals and like the struggles of the owners of these pets. And so that really made the story much more sad. But there's no happy ending to the story. There's no overall theme that I got. The entire story is just her talking about like how bad her life is and like her day to day. And yeah, I don't understand the point of this one. It was not like sad in like a way like some of the other stories that like deal about grief. This one was just a downer, and also for there not like to be a happy ending, for there to be like a moral of the story, also just really confused me. Like I really did not see the point of this story. The next story is The Radioactives, and this one I gave 3 stars to. We are following a group of 4 characters who are all related to each other, and they start a job together, and this job is exposing them to radioactive material, and it starts changing their bodies. And I really enjoyed like the action-packedness of this story. It was definitely a lot different from the other ones in that there was so much going on and like so much action. However, I do think that's also its downfall, because it tried to pack too much into this short story without really expanding on things too much. And for the theme of this story, I would say it's definitely about like the greediness of politicians and how they will harm their own citizens knowingly in order to make a profit and to get what they want out of the situation. But it also does have some commentary on the US specifically outsourcing labor to poorer countries, even though it could cause them harm. And yeah, I think this was a pretty solid story, and it's one that I definitely feel has the potential to be a novella, and even maybe an actual like full-length novel. But for a short story, there's just a lot going on, but it was very interesting to read about. So overall for this collection, I'm going to give it 3 stars. There are some very strong stories in here, and I do like all the variety of themes that are posed in this collection. However, just because there were some that I didn't like and some that I did like, I'm just going with a solid middle ground 3-star read. Now let's talk about Black Sun, because this book I gave 5 stars to, and I did in fact break my book buying ban in order to get the next book in this series. However, I did get it on sale. The next book in the series only costed me $5, so you know. But this story is so good. I feel like this is definitely going to push me back into my fantasy era. I have been reading a lot of romance lately and not enough fantasy, especially high fantasy like this one. And this one just reminded me of why I enjoy high fantasy so much, because this was so good. I am so obsessed with this book, and I need everyone to read it so I have people to talk to about this book, because I am in love. This was absolutely amazing, and specifically like the tension near the end, I thought that was so perfect. This story also really surprised me, and the way that it is written is not something I typically enjoy, specifically with time jumps. So this book, for one specific character, it will go back in time to explore their childhood, and that is usually something I hate in books, but in this one I absolutely loved it, specifically because maybe it was my favorite character and that's why. However, it's just usually not something I enjoy in books, so for me to enjoy it, it was definitely something interesting that kind of shocked me. But this book does have quite a few POVs, and I loved all of them. There was never a point in this story where I wanted to just go back to one specific point of view. I really enjoyed that. Like, that's such a rare thing for me to find, for me to enjoy all of the POVs and all of the characters in a story. There's usually one I tend to favor more, and that was definitely not the case in this story. Even though there was one clear favorite character of mine, I was still very intrigued by all of the other point of views and everything that was going on. And I definitely loved the ending of this book, how we get to see these characters finally coming together, and just like all of the action scenes, loved it. The magic systems, the politics, all of it was just so well done, and I absolutely adored this book. I cannot express how obsessed with this book I am and how much it shocked me. And I'm not sure if I had mentioned it earlier or like the last time I talked about this book, but one of the main reasons that I decided to pick up this blind date with a book is specifically because on the packaging it said it was R.F. Kuang approved, and I love R.F. Kuang's books, specifically The Poppy War. It's one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, and I can definitely see why R.F. Kuang would like this book. And specifically, I feel like there's a lot of parallels to the Poppy War trilogy and this one. They are definitely not necessarily similar in plot or like the writing style, but just the ease in which you're sent into a fantasy world that is so intricately political and has such a very like specific magic system. It was so easy to read, and it definitely reminds me of my first time reading The Poppy War and how like absolutely obsessed with that series I got, and how easy and quick it was to read these big books, even though they are quite chunky. And yeah, I really appreciate that. And yes, I'm just gonna say, if you enjoyed The Poppy War, definitely try this series. I think they are somewhat similar in the same vibe, but yes, I love this book. I love it so much. 5 stars, and I believe this is the first 5-star read I have had in months. I want to say like my last 5-star read was like back in March or April, so this was such a nice surprise. But that concludes my reading vlog of these 3 books that I picked up on a whim based on the blind date packaging. And yeah, so The Rock Eaters I gave 3 stars, The Intimacy Experiment I gave 4 stars, and then Black Sun I gave 5 stars. So we definitely have like a clear winner. However, all of these books were really good. I would recommend all of them. And sadly, Barnes & Nobles did come out on top, but you know, it is still a POC author that I am supporting, and it's a very queer story. I'm not sure if I mentioned that either, but there are multiple queer characters in this story, and it was so well done. But I am so happy that I did this challenge. It was so much fun. Let me know what you guys think of blind dates with a book. Do you guys like enjoy finding them and picking them up, or would you just rather pick up a book on your own? Definitely let me know. Very curious to see what you guys think. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching. I do have another reading vlog that I am in the process of reading like another set of 3 books, and I'm very excited for that one. It is a fantasy one. I'm getting back into my fantasy era, obviously, after reading Black Sun, but stay tuned for that. And thank you guys so much for making it to the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, comment whatever you feel like commenting, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!